Welcome to the Squad Games Podcast. Squad Games Podcast.
Got my notes. This says Giacomo is cool and then has like a heart around it, but
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah. I don't know how well it's going to be on the test. I don't think that's any of the answers, but I appreciate it. But you know what I can appreciate? I can appreciate how much people are listening to the Squad Games podcast. My name is Giacomo. Today I'm with Dakotah and Sheldon, and we're going to talk about Hierotek Circle. That was the cold opening, guys. There you go. Yeah.
So everyone knows on our podcast, this is our second attempt at this. We recorded this episode about 3 weeks ago, and the audio died. So today we have Mr. Giacomo, the one and only G-Man himself, and we have the one and only Sheldon, Kill Team Stream, and me, Dakotah. So I've met other Dakotas, so I'm not the only one and only. Sorry.
yeah, I've met Giacomo's and Sheldon's too. But
have you?
We're the one and only us. I don't know. Sorry.
I mean, it's like Highlander rules, right, Dakotah? So you got to go seek them out and finish them.
Wouldn't that mean
eat them so that they become part of you? Like Jet Li's the one. It's way better than the Highlander.
Is that what happens?
Yeah, he doesn't like cannibalize them like Hannibal Lecter, but in Jet Li's the one. He goes in like to different universes and sucks up all their powers and stuff and becomes super strong, and it's a great movie.
10 out of 10. Great movie, guys.
It is.
Would recommend.
It's almost as good as the D&D movie was.
Didn't see it.
It's not a hot take. It actually was much better than I thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I liked it.
Oh,
yeah, I liked it. It was, I think it's fine. Uh-huh.
You think it's fine?
Yeah, it's fine.
Just fine? You just said it was good.
Yeah, I didn't say it was great.
I think the thing that we have to remember is that the expectations for this movie were super low. It was like a big budget Dungeons and Dragons movie, right?
That's true. Every 40K movie and D&D movie has really sucked to this point in time.
The fact that it was watchable is already a step above, and it was actually pretty fun. There were some pretty cool moments. Yeah. I mean, it's not winning
Don't you do it, Giacomo.
I'm not going to say it. You're already thinking it, so I'm good.
I am thinking it. Everyone else on this podcast is thinking of it too.
I don't know. Maybe.
That's how he wins. He's like a mind virus.
He is a mind virus.
He was the mimic.
All right. Oh, Giacomo.
Oh my goodness. Giacomo. Well, I mean, I think at this point I want to thank our patrons for keeping us motivated, bankrolling these episodes, making it happen.
Absolutely, and also thanking FLG. They're letting us become an affiliate for their network. And also, if you guys are going to any FLG events, that's including Lone Star Open, ASO, or BAO in the near future, if you buy a ticket from our affiliate link, we do get a kickback, and it does help support the show and our YouTube. So that would be awesome if you guys want to. If not, I understand.
But you should do
it.
You should.
You guys got an affiliate link.
Yeah, so it's pretty fascinating. We actually have the one and only Sheldon on, like I said before, and he is the tournament organizer for Bay Area Open for the past 3 years, correct?
Yeah, and you know what's pretty cool about the Bay Area Open?
What's up?
That affiliate link would work if you're trying to get tickets to it. So,
sure would. No way.
And
if you're getting tickets,
this is shaping up to be the biggest BAO ever, correct? It's always been historically like a smaller kill team outcome. But
I mean, to be fair, to be the biggest Bay Area Open ever is a pretty low bar, but it is actually turning out to be pretty good. I think the previous record is 12, so we're and we're already over double that. So I mean, can't get better.
Yeah, but there's also a ton of people coming to this. So we have Jimmy Kelly, who won Kill Team Open.
Yeet.
We have Baki, Chris Baki, who is one of the best players in the United States. We have Sheldon, Kill Team Stream himself.
I mean, I won't be playing, but I'll be there.
Yeah, he's a legendary tournament organizer and one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. So if you guys are coming, make sure that you stop by and say hello to them. Baki's been on our podcast multiple times. So is Sheldon, and Jimmy Kelly's been on once. Also, me, Giacomo, and Saya are planning to be there as well. So if you guys are fans of the podcast, decide to come on down or come through the tournament, say hi, we'll chat, and hang out and talk about some Kill Team, some Warhammer, and roll some dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's May 27th through 28th at the San Francisco Airport Marriott Waterfront in Burlingame, California, just by the San Francisco Airport. So make sure to check it out. And like they said at the beginning, make sure to use your affiliate link, your Squad Games affiliate link, located in the description to get your tickets.
That is correct in the description.
Yeah, and podcasts do have a description. I know that not everyone knows, but our Discord link is there. So if you guys ever want to join our Discord, say what's up, chat with us. We just had someone from Scotland join our Discord. And that was really cool to see. It was I'm very excited to see our podcast growing and the community growing. And I just have to thank all the listeners, for this. Like no matter how many listeners we have, if we took every single listener and put them in a single room, it's kind of like we're talking. It's such a cool idea that we're able to talk to everyone. So again, thank you guys for your continued support.
Yes.
I mean, if you took all your listeners and put them in a single room, I think you'd need to rent out a pretty big room there.
Very well made.
Hey, let's all go to Las Vegas Open, guys.
Yeah. So the last time we talked on this episode, we were talking about the Hierotek Circle. They are the newest upcoming bad boys on the block. There was a tournament that they were in at a local Warhammer store down here, and there's 4 or 5 of them all playing out of 14 players. And their popularity seems to be on the rise. Giacomo, do you think these guys were overbuffed?
I think, like a lot of expectations, such as the D&D movie, maybe Warhammer movies, this team had low expectations too.
Oh
so any amount of buff is very much appreciated. No, I think the change is fine.
Let's set the stage. This team out of the gate
was awful.
Came out hitting a 0-0 batting average. There were multiple tournaments where even good players playing them were losing every single game, and they had I think the worst win rate we've ever seen in the game. Besides maybe something that isn't being tracked like visibly, like I don't know, heavy intercessors or something, but they were not doing too hot, and they received a buff in the previous data slate, which brought them up to a hot D tier. So I mean, the fact that they are now being talked about in potentially being good, I think they've earned it, just saying, just throwing it out there.
so you guys know, if you guys haven't listened to our past podcasts, when they came out for the All Valley Team Tournament, we had them pegged as probably the worst team ever, because they came to the All Valley Team Tournament, and even though it said they won 6 games, that's just strictly because of how team tournament works. If your team wins, then everyone counts as a win on your team. So we had one particular team, Team Angry, the people who won the whole thing. They had a Hierotek player that played against some of the best players in the world, Jonathan Marquise, and he lost every game. And so did the other Hierotek player, that was Alec Berryman. two of the possibly the best sports in all of Kill Team. And it was funny after that weekend, the very first weekend that they were released was the All Valley Team Tournament. And there's also a tournament that happened in Spain. It turns out they had a 34 or 40% win rate. And people were like, oh, they're not that bad. But they actually had a 0% win rate because they didn't win a single game in Europe or in the United States. But because of our team tournament, it like changed the fluctuation. And then people found out. So
I think it was actually a 12% win rate because I won one game, and then in that Spanish tournament, one of the Hierotek players beat the last place group player, I believe, for a hot 12% win rate.
Hey, you know what? They were better than Compendium Crew, so that is saying something.
Yeah, I mean, I still thought Crew were good on the drop, and they've also, similar to Hierotek, they've received a bunch of buffs as well. So I mean,
yeah, they're the Farstalker Kinban, right? The Farstalker Kinban, I've been told from many sources that they are good right now. They are really good. The problem is that when you take them to a tournament, you're gonna lose one of your 3 games just because they're so dependent on dice rolls. So because one game, statistically, you're going to roll poorly. That's why intercession is so popular, is because even if you roll poorly, you're still going to kill stuff, right? Because Farstalker Kinbad will roll bad one game, you will lose that game that you roll bad. So, yeah, it's fascinating. Do you think what grade do you think the Hierotek Circle is now, Sheldon?
Right now, I think I would say probably an A.
Oh yeah,
yeah, where they're at right now. I think with all the buffs that they've gotten in the recent data slate, don't be sleeping on these guys. They've got some really cool tricks, and their biggest negative previous to this was their staying ability, and that's been greatly enhanced by the changes to reanimation protocols, which I think really gives the team the legs that it needed to compete in the big leagues.
So why don't you explain more on that? Because not everyone might be super familiar with the Hierotek Circle. Because I know before our last episode, I'd never even looked at them because they were so bad they would just never appear at any tournament. So like they got buffed, and I was like, oh god, now I have to learn these guys. And it wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't like I was like, oh, they're actually not that complicated.
It's a pleasant surprise.
They seem complicated.
Play them.
Yeah,
I would almost say they're a good beginner team because even though it sounds like on paper, like when you look at it, you might see all these abilities and think, oh wow, this is like maybe really complicated, like something like Warp Coven, with their sorcerers. It's actually way easier than you might think, because unlike the sorcerers where you're having to pick, 3 boons and you're having to, figure out, your spells and all that stuff, with this team, you're usually only picking one of those special sorcerer characters, which are called the Cryptex in Necron terms, and they're usually only taking 2 abilities, and once you figure those out, everything else is pretty much, falls into place, because you're basically just working with, a bunch of immortals and maybe a death mark and a Prentek. And that's, once you figure out the Cryptek, everything else is pretty simple.
Somebody once told me that it's cool to disagree with the people that you have on your podcast, and I will do that right now.
Nice.
I think that this team is good. I know I just said I disagree, and I'll tell you why. I think they're great for beginners. I do think that. The problem is I am actually putting together a Hierotek Circle right now for a commission that I'm working on. And I can tell you that this team is not fun to put together, hobby-wise. I have big hands. I have been doing this hobby for 20 years, and I feel like I actually have to use a tweezer on a lot of their bits just to glue them together, because some of the bits are just so fiddly. It reminds me of putting together the flayed ones. And after I put together the flayed ones, I wanted to do things that I can't say to myself on this podcast. Anyone can imagine what that is. But like, yeah, I was I did not enjoy putting together the brand new flayed ones. So
I will tell you,
mhm.
the Psychomancer is probably. I've done a lot of hobby. Like, I have converted models. I've done crazy stuff that's probably way harder than anything that stock GW can produce. I still think the Psychomancer is probably, if not the hardest, definitely in the top 2 hardest models I've ever had to put together.
I am not enjoying. I have to do him soon. I just did the Technomancer. I did a Printech, and the Printech is what gave me some problems because of this like weird neck collar. So you guys know it has this neck collar that you have to attach a neck piece to, and then you have to glue that onto the model. And if you don't get the neck piece incorrectly, the head won't sit right on it. And it's super fiddly and super small. And it's like, oh God, I hope I don't break this. I hope I don't break it. Okay, I didn't break it. And
oh, you sweet summer child. The
it literally
is going to break your soul. I promise you this.
It has taken me 30 minutes to an hour to put together every single model. Now, that might be because I've been trying this plastic glue. I'm not usually the biggest fan of plastic glue, but I wanted these models to like last a long time. And it takes, did you guys know that plastic glue, like the Tamiya, like thin set cement and the Tamiya cement takes 2.5 hour dry time? Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah.
That is frustrating. Let me tell you, when I'm a super glue man, right? It is frustrating to basically be like, okay, I'm going to put this over here. You pick it up like 15 minutes later and like 2 pieces fall off and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this again. Very frustrating.
I did not know that.
That's why I use the Model Master plastic cement.
Okay.
What do you use?
The Model Master plastic cement. That stuff is it's pretty much the same sort of stuff as the Tamiya, but instead of like a brush applicator, it's like a tiny kind of like thin metal tube.
Okay.
The worst part about it is that you have to kind of like stick a little needle down that tube every like couple times that you use it because it'll get clogged. But the it's just perfect for miniatures. It's like it does basically the same thing as the Tamiya. It like fuses the plastic together, but it does it very quickly and it's very strong once it's set.
What is your favorite glue, Giacomo?
I mean, when it comes down, I'm a big fan of BSI, the pink bottle, which I believe is that or the gold. The gold one's good too. Well, it's called black gold, but yeah. I like BSI.
Black gold is also great for acrylic, right?
They're great for a lot of things because black gold doesn't leave staining. That's a big thing for me. Because right now I'm using an army painter super glue because I just needed something at the time and that was there. I hate it. It leaves so much like the little white spots if you let it dry. But there's one thing I wanted to point out that has nothing to do with glue. Do you think that the Pariah Nexus box is going to see a resurgence in purchasing because of the one specific model that's in that box?
Yes, Giacomo, absolutely. I can already tell you that. Because of this commission, I had to find was it the Chronomancer that came in that box, Sheldon?
Yep, Chronomancer.
Yeah, well, he's impossible to freaking find. Impossible. So, and this person wanted every single miniature in the team. So, I've been trying to source that for a while. It was quite a pain in the butt to do it, and it was expensive to get. So,
I did not realize the Chronomancer was hard to find because I know he's sold separately. I didn't know that
he's sold out online, and then I believe that he is currently at least at the time of recording this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to just touch on BSI's purple glue is my glue of choice when it comes to anything other than plastics.
BSI is great. They're a California source based company, and they did sponsor LVO. And I wasn't the biggest fan of them. I actually used Zap-A-Gap for like millions of years that I've been alive. and the BSI is I quite like. So
Oh yeah, I've been using their purple bottle pretty much since I started in this hobby, and it has not let me down. Back in the old days when you would use like, the super glue that you could get at a hardware store before there were all these like hobby glues and stuff. It used to be a real pain to glue together metal models, and you'd have to like drill like a pin and then put the pin in so that it wouldn't fall apart. But now with the BSI glues, I have like complete confidence to glue a metal model together without any pinning.
It's that
yeah,
good.
BSI is a great company. If you guys out there look at, they aren't currently sponsoring us now. I mean, I've been in the talks of possibly getting some of their glue in my shop, but haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. If any of you guys are interested in buying a Lester's Workshop branded glue, why don't you add us on? Yeah. Why don't you add us on, or at least mine and Giacomo's and Sheldon's favorites? If you're interested, give us a shout out on our Discord or on Twitter or something, But yeah.
Yeah,
So let's get back to living metal. We were talking
Hierotek
about
Circle.
living metal.
Necrons.
Yeah.
When I said that this team was easy, I guess I forgot to mention that I wasn't talking about the hobby aspect. I was talking about the play aspect. The team is I mean, Immortals are pretty easy to put together, but yeah,
Agreed. Yeah.
the team is not the easiest to model, but they are very easy to play once you get past their idiosyncrasies and what makes them special. I think if we want to go through the team,
Absolutely.
So we were talking about living metal reanimation. That's probably a good place to start since it's their special ability. The thing that makes them unique. If you know anything about Necron lore, Necrons are basically robots made out of this substance called living metal. You could think of it almost like the Terminator T-1000, turning into a liquid metal blob and then coming back together and forming a shape. Well, that's what they do. So when you shoot one of them, it's pretty easy for them to repair it, which that's how it is represented on the tabletop is with the living metal and the reanimation protocols rules. Living metal, simple. You regain 2 lost wounds at the beginning of every turn in the ready operative step, or 1 for the plasmacytes. And then reanimation protocols is an interesting ability that they have that allows dead models to come back potentially in a future turn after they've been incapacitated on the battlefield. So basically, there are 3 ways to reanimate with the team. There's the stock. You can kind of think of it as your basic. Anyone can reanimate with a tactical ploy called commence reanimation, which allows you to do it without any like you don't have to be next to a certain model or something like that. Like anyone on the team, if they die, you can do that. And because of the balanced data slate, it's free. So because it's a tactical ploy, there's still the limitation of being able to use it once per turn, but it doesn't cost any CP. So you can do that once per turn. The other way that you can reanimate is with the special plasmacyte model called the Plasmacyte Reanimator. His special ability is if you die when you're within 6 inches of it, you can also do the reanimation attempt. And the final way is if you bring the Technomancer Cryptek, he has a third way that allows you to do it. And because of the way that the Apprentech works, if the Technomancer is on the field, the Apprentech also has that ability. So basically, there's 3 ways to do it. So you could have a potential of up to 3 models reanimating. And basically how it works is when you attempt reanimation, you put like a token down on the board, along with any like effects that it still has, +1 APL, -1 APL. If it's got some special spell or something from an enemy that's like making it injured or something like that. All those stay, or like marker lights from Tau, that sort of thing. And you turn it into a token on the battlefield, along with you keep whether or not it was engaged or concealed.
Mm-hmm.
And at the beginning of the next turn, you get to roll for any models that have like any of these tokens that you have out on the battlefield, basically. So when you roll, if you roll 3 up, you successfully reanimate. So you put the model back on the field where the token was, or within 3 inches of that token now, per the data slate, and it comes back with D3 plus 3 wounds, and then you immediately still get to do the living metal roll, which means that you're basically getting D3 plus 5 wounds back onto the model, and you're getting to place it within 3 inches of where that token dropped. There's been a little bit of confusion because the Wahapedia article, I think, has a misprint, but basically it doesn't have to be set up as close as possible to where the token was. It's just within 3 inches, so you get to kind of do anything as long as it's within 3 inches of the center of the token.
Oh, that's spicy.
That is.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than it was before.
And then the thing is, once that model has been reanimated, it can't be reanimated again. So you get 1. It's like everybody gets 1, sort of a Spider-Man joke, right? It's pretty cool. A few of the changes that the data slate made is, like I said, it bumped it up to D3 plus 3, and the within 3 inches, and allows you to put now an order of your choice on it. And it also, if you're doing it with the reanimator, it doesn't subtract 1 from its APL like it would have with the rules as written. So it's basically free to reanimate somebody, and it costs 0 CP to do it with deploy. So basically, it's just free to reanimate all across the board.
Now, here's what I'm wondering. When you had the living metal ability, and let's say I'm doing a ploy or a attack up that would get me a point for killing something, does that still count if you make the reanimation protocol save and then come back up?
So you should be incapacitated. So basically, if the way that the rule is worded is that the model has to be incapacitated, you technically are. So
awesome.
Fair enough.
The only thing that they is in narrative play, it changes it because it's not treated as incapacitated for casualty tests, but for like getting points and stuff, you can still get points off of a incapacitated model that way.
Sweet.
So that's a small nerf for them, but ultimately it's still, I mean, they would have got it anyways, right? What is your favorite model in this in the Hierotek Circle, Sheldon?
Favorite model?
So everyone knows Sheldon is a Necron man. He has a lot of Necrons, a lot. He can probably rival my Eldar with the amount of Necrons he has. So
yeah, I have approximately 25,000 points of Necrons.
25,000?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got a lot more than me.
I have every model that they've ever made, plus multiples of most of them,
including second edition versions of Necron, like the small metal ones.
Those are the only ones I used to have. I sold when I was a kid, and I regret it. But I have all of the I know, so sad. I actually started Necrons in second edition. Funny story: when I first started playing Necrons, the only rules they had were in a white dwarf, and they were like a couple blister boxes on the corner of the Games Workshop like store, and I thought they were the coolest thing. I was like, oh wow, these are like robots that come back to life, and that's what started me with Warhammer back in second edition. These like metal Necrons, and when you would bring them to the Games Workshop store, like people would literally go, no, you have to play Games Workshop armies here, and I'd be like, oh, they're down in the corner, and people would be like, what is this? So then when the big third edition plastic Necrons came out with the little green tubes and stuff, I was all about it. I was so happy. They were the coolest thing that ever happened. I was like, I love those little tubes, even though they've kind of gotten rid of them from the line. Like that was the thing as a kid. I was like, oh look, they've got little green energy tubes. It's cool.
Yeah, those were cool. Those were cool. I actually sold all of my third edition Necrons for my wedding. And I think I kept like 12 Necron warriors. Out of your collection, what is your favorite Necron model, and what is your favorite Necron model on the Hierotek team?
Well, the favorite model on the team is definitely the Psychomancer. But my favorite model that I have is a conversion I've done, which is a conversion of the Forge World special character, which actually my whole Necron collection, I have it all themed as the special Forge World Maynarch dynasty, which they're the main character that I really love is Toholk the Blinded, who is he's the famous Necron who created all the little Canoptek creations. So all the little like scarabs and spiders and centipedes and all that stuff. He was the one that created them. He's called the
super cool model. If anyone looks him up.
Yeah, he's the reason he's blind though is because he tried to destroy time, and he was punished. They took away his reanimation ability and blinded him, like took out his eye for trying to destroy time.
Yeah, that's a little bad, you know.
I think it's a little bad ass.
Living metal. No, that's awesome. Is there any do you have like a favorite vehicle? Did you like their most recent like update when 9th edition gave them a bunch of love?
Yeah, no, I was excited and horrified at my paycheck when 9th came out. I've got to spend a lot of money. But yeah, no, I've loved everything that they've come out with for the Necrons. One kind of like sleeper thing that came out right before 9th was the Sraptek Construct, which is the like Necron Titan from Forge World, which I have, and it's pretty boss.
My two favorite models would be the Scorpek Destroyers. I love those, the little dudes with the little sword arms and stuff. If they ever came to Kill Team, I would have to play them. And I also really like Sazarek, the Silent King. So I think they did a great job with those two, for sure. Yeah, Giacomo, do you have any favorites?
Yes, it is the lowly but surely not always needed in most games, Necron Warrior. When I almost started Necrons after Space Marines back when I was like 14, that was what I liked, was those acrylic green tubes that you could just put in, and I thought those were so cool that I wanted to play Necrons. And then I never did.
I agree.
Because they are still cool.
Yeah, I mean the Necron Warrior is the heart of the team. Like, basically it basically be like all of the citizenry of the Necron tier became just these warriors, and they're like the bulk of the army.
I thought Immortals were cool too, but I don't know how Immortals are doing now in the game. I'm actually not sure if they're still around. They still a thing? Oh no, I was thinking Pariahs. Sorry.
Oh yeah, Pariahs are not. They are actually, I think, like the only major thing that they like removed from the army, but basically you could use those models now as Lich Guard is what you.
I love the pariahs, and I love the Nightbringer. Those were my favorite models back in the day for them.
Nightbringer's dope.
Dude, the Void Dragon looks pretty good nowadays.
Yeah, it's surprisingly. Yeah, it is.
And the new Void Dragon is super cool. I could go on about Necrons for forever.
So what's your, going back to Hierotek, what is your favorite strategic ploy or attack ploy? Or possibly both?
So, I mean, obviously you can't talk about it without, the reanimation, which is a tactical ploy. But the for strategic ploys, there is an ability called Intractable March. And basically, it adds 2 inches to Deathmark and Immortal's movement characteristics if they have an engage order. And that's kind of crucial for your first turn in almost every game. Like, it has to be pretty special for you to not use that, because they've got 4-inch movement base, and so that puts you up to 6 inches, which, is kind of the only way to get out onto the board turn 1. So it becomes almost like a mandatory ploy that you have to use in every game. Usually always the first turn, usually the second turn. After that, you might not need it, but yeah, you're usually playing that ploy every game.
Copy that. Is there anything else that stands out to you that players should probably know about or use more often, or possibly use less often?
Yeah, I mean, Undying Androids is pretty good. It allows you to basically, if you're not in cover, still retain your cover dice is pretty much how it works. So if you're out in the middle of nowhere with your immortal, somebody gets like loops around and denies you cover, you're still going to get cover. And with this team, you kind of want to really make sure that you stay alive. And so any way to, boost up your survivability is definitely something you want to be doing.
Right.
It's also got a pretty cool cortical subjugation, which is a tactical ploy. One of the cool things about that is I don't know if you've ever heard Chris Baki talk about his blooded, but he calls his get down, Mr. President. That's basically what it is. You can have somebody jump in front of the Cryptek. And if it's being shot, you can shoot the other model instead of the Cryptek. And then Leech Power is pretty fun. So basically, if you're going to activate your Cryptek, you can give it +1 APL, and it basically steals that APL from another operative on the team. And the operative, as long as it's within 4 inches of the Cryptek, you take 1 APL from it. And with the buffs from the data slate, since your accelerator and your reanimator plasma sites aren't really like losing their APL anymore from their abilities, they've got a lot more APL to give out to the Cryptek. So usually it's good to steal it from the plasma sites. You can steal it from like the reanimator and then go do a massive 4 APL. But basically, because command is now free, 5 APL turn with your Cryptek, and that's always gonna give your enemy a hard time.
That's really unique.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that you
imagine
think.
the Chronomancer. Yeah, the Chronomancer having 5 APL, but having basically a 9-inch movement, so you can move 11 inches with a move and a dash with fly and have 5 APL. It's pretty brutal.
Now, do you typically take recon, security, or competitively wise, do you take recon, security, or tac ops? Or they're innate tac ops themselves?
So you can only take one of their unique tech ups. So I
Mhm.
usually take one. Most of the time, I find myself defaulting to Unearth Artifice. Um, the it's kind of like what's the recon uh the tech up that you pick up.
Recover item?
Yeah, it's kind of like recover item. Basically, it's like free points.
Fair enough. Which one was that again?
Unearth Artifice.
All right. And then I would assume that you take recon as well,
Yeah.
or usually at least.
It depends on the team that you're playing against, but yeah, recon and security are both pretty good. I find myself typically doing recon, but yeah, security is also solid with this team, I think.
So can you just put the unearthed artifice item near your recover item and just kind of pick it up
Yeah,
with like one or two models?
basically, so the recover item is a little bit more restrictive than the unearthed artifice. So basically, the recover item has to be in your opponent's side of the board. Basically, like, a millimeter away from the center line is kind of where it usually ends up getting placed. But the unearthed artifice just has to be within or farther away than 6 inches of your drop zone. So sometimes you might want to separate them if you've got a certain plan. You can kind of like leapfrog from one to the other sort of thing. But yeah, if you have a way to, for instance, deploy a death mark, and they have an ability called dimensional translocation where you can forward deploy them on open boards. In an instance where you could put both of them in a advantageous place for him to teleport onto, you could theoretically secure them both with a death mark, and then it makes sense to put them both in the same spot.
Fair. Yeah, that's pretty strong. Not gonna lie. So let's move on to the lesser guys before we talk about the heroes of the army. What do you usually take? Do you usually take the Tesla carbine or the Gauss blasters on your immortals? Because I assume that immortals are the way to go with this team.
Yeah. You're always taking the Despotech Immortal in every matchup. I think he's an auto take. And then your mixture of Immortals can vary. I usually, it's not a steadfast rule, but usually I'm running Gauss against elite teams and Tesla against, more horde teams. There are exceptions, like, if you're playing Gellerpox, they've got a little of both. You might want to bring, for instance, like the Despotech with the Gauss, and then your basic troops with the Tesla, that sort of thing. There are some instances where, you're switching out, for a Death Mark and an Apprentech, and you've only got like maybe two Immortal, there's some kind of edge cases, but usually it's a good rule that Gauss against elites and Tesla against.
Now, why is that? So our listeners know, if you don't have the book open, the Tesla carbine has 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, and does 3/3 damage with splash 1. While the Gauss blasters have 4 attacks, hitting on 3s, 4/5 damage, AP 1. Now, the Despotech is awesome because he has, instead of having the stereotypical 10 wounds that most immortals have, he has 12 wounds, and he hits on 2s.
Yep.
Which is bonkers. Which is a really big buff, which I really like.
I think the math works out that like the Tesla carbine is almost always the best option, but the there's something to be said for when you're going up against an elite model, the extra damage and the AP1, and they're not usually going to be clumped up together in general, so the splash kind of becomes useless.
Yeah.
Other than for like a few mortal wounds if you get crits. But I tend to think that like the Teslas, if you're against a team that's is going to be clumping up, and I mean most horde teams, it's impossible to not deploy them like somewhat clumped.
Yeah.
You can get some really good like economy out of a Tesla because there's an equipment that you can take that's called the arc shock projector that makes your splash 3 inches instead of 2, and almost across the board people prepare for 2-inch blast, but almost nobody ever prepares for the 3-inch splash, and you can really like hurt like a horde team, especially on like when you're doing like the triangle, the Toblerone deployments,
The Toblerones, of course. Mm-hmm.
because they're
You
really
just triggered half of our audience. The other half don't know what a Toblerone
You
is.
just triggered Dakota.
I just had to throw that in there.
I like it.
But whenever you've got a big team that's clumped up, that splash, the exception to that is breachers. Breachers have I think it's like void armor that stops the splash damage, so it's almost never worth taking the Tesla against them, even though they're a larger team and might clump up. The Gauss Blaster, I think, maths out better against them. And I think Blooded also have ways to get around the splash with their beast pelts, I think. So basically, as long as you know that they're not negating that splash damage, it really does a lot, and you get a lot of economy out of it.
Gotcha. And now, that arc shock projector is quite a good thing to have in your list for your equipment because it does give that 3. That's very powerful. Not a lot of people know about that. In fact, I was one of the ones that didn't know about that until we did this episode last time.
I mean, basically, if you're taking Tesla, I almost always take the arc shock projector on them.
Now, is there a reason to possibly take both?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, if you're going up against, say, Gellerpox, you're going to maybe want to pump the Gauss into the Hulks and the Tesla into the more Gribbly guys,
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the and is there a reason why you don't take the Tesla carbine for the Immortal Dispotek?
I do sometimes. I mean, if I'm taking all Gauss or all Tesla, usually the Immortal will match, the Dispotek will match the Immortals. So, I kind of run them as like sort of, a cohesive group. Basically, the Dispotek usually matches the Immortals. Like I said, the only difference is maybe if you're playing a team that has, Hulks and Gribblies, right? So you've got to kind of be doing 2 different things, but most teams usually have a gimmick and they're all kind of that gimmick. So having both of your Immortals and your Dispotek as the same is usually the play, whichever that may be, Gauss or Tesla.
Got it. Now, what about these plasma scythes? What is the key to using them correctly in a match?
So plasma scythes, funny
Those
enough,
are the little bug-looking things.
Yeah, funny enough, talking about Gellerpox, they share a similar ability with Gellerpox that they can fall back for a less action point. So they fly, they're fast, they're very fragile. They have a couple like special abilities, they're always treated as having a conceal order. When they have a conceal order, so like you can't get vantage on them, that sort of thing. They can fall
Super
back.
conceal.
Yeah, they can fall back for 1 less action point. So if think you're locking them up, you're not, or they can lock you up and then jump right back out. They're
They both have fly, right? But instead of the bugs in Gellerpox, these guys can take objective points, correct?
correct. Yeah, you can kind of use them as little like objective jockeys that jump around, and they could do something like secure vantage, fly up at the very end of a turn, just so you can get that secure vantage.
So good.
Yeah, they can fly onto a point and loot it, that sort of thing that maybe you wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise. They've got a lot of utility just in their native ability, like the Reanimator, giving a bubble for an extra reanimation is super strong. So the Plasmacyte Reanimator is probably the MVP out of the two Plasmacytes, and the Accelerator kind of becomes like, I don't want to say that he's like just, my little suicide drone, but he basically is. I can send him up and do stuff, and I'm not too worried about him dying because I don't really get too much use out of his like comms ability. But that being said, he does pair up pretty well with the Despotek if you are going to try and go that route, because you can comms the Despotek, and now you've got 12 wound hitting on twos command module going through. That's that's pretty strong.
Yeah, the thing that I think we missed out on was going back to the Despotek having the demand ability, and he can demand somebody else giving them something to do, but he can also do that to himself, correct?
So basically, he has an ability called Demand, which lets him select a death mark or immortal visible to, and you're always visible to yourself and within 6 inches of himself. And he gets basically a free reroll without having to spend a command point. It used to be the kind of thing you would never use because the
Costs an AP.
Yeah, it cost an AP, and it was you had a 2 APL model that's already like has some important jobs on a very like low model count team, but now post data slate, it's a free ability, so you basically like use it every turn now because there's no reason not to, and because even if you don't have any other targets, he can always do it to himself, right? So now you're rolling on twos, re-rolling one of the dice. It's pretty strong.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the Deathmark and Printek. Deathmark, we spoke last time. What is the reason, and why do you take him when you take him? Because I know that he's not taken very often.
Yeah, he's the kind of model that you only bring out if it makes sense to bring him out. He's obviously not as good on Into the Dark, and he is really good in open boards. But he can teleport down onto the field halfway through the turn one, or at the end of turn one. Whenever you would activate him, he can teleport onto the field basically.
And that's with a tactical ploy, dimensional translocation for 1 CP.
Yeah. So if you're taking the Death Mark, you're almost usually using the dimensional translocation ploy because it's kind of gives him, because his weapon has heavy. So basically, you usually want to set him up where he's going to be and then not move him, kind of thing. So the ability to teleport gives him, the ability to not have to worry about the fact that, he's only moving 4 inches and he's got a heavy weapon and, all these things, because he's teleporting wherever he wants to be, and it's usually on top of a vantage point or on top of your recover item / unearth artifice token, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. And then he can also like just jump right onto your retrieve item, your unearth artifice, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So usually turn one, I'm bringing him down, picking up the recover item, because he'll have 1 APL turn one. And then turn two, you can either give him an extra APL with the plasma sight, or he can do the Unearth Artifice. Or alternatively, there is kind of a cool thing because the Immortal Despotek command ability, you can actually have him, even though he's counting as moved, he can Overwatch turn 1 if you command him. So there is some cheese there that you can kind of like get out of him. Get him up onto a vantage point. Make sure your Despotek hasn't activated yet. Then you could give the Despotek maybe something like Chronometron from the Chronomancer, so he gets an extra 3 inches of movement. He runs up, and then command, or no, from the Apprentice. You'd have to do it from the Apprentice. So the Apprentice gives him the 3 inches of movement, and then the Cryptek commands the Deathmark to Overwatch through the Despotek. It's kind of a crazy. This team is all about those kind of crazy combos. In my mind.
And the more you play them, the more you find out. Like this one, I want to ask you about right now. So why don't you tell us about that high level strategy that you could do with the Apprentice and his little overlord, like one of the who's the dude with the Staff of Light or Bissell? What any of the HQ models?
Yeah. So basically, the Apprentice is like the wannabe Cryptek, and he can do. He can either do the Cryptek's power instead of the Cryptek. For instance, if your Cryptek is incapacitated, he can do that ability. If you want to use it from a different area of the board, the Apprentice can do it. If you want to keep the Cryptek safe, that sort of thing. He also has an ability called Magnification Conduit, which allows you to shoot from the Cryptek through the Apprentice. And the cheese I talked about previously, which you're referencing, is that the Cryptek can be on a vantage point shooting through the Apprentice, and the Apprentice will, even though the Apprentice might be on the ground level, it's still receiving, the shot is still receiving the benefits of vantage. So you can get some pretty cool, tricky shots. Also, theoretically,
super cool shot.
Yeah. Also, because of the way that it's worded, the Apprentice could even be in combat, and you can shoot through him. You can't shoot at the person that you're in combat with, but you could shoot through him to somebody else.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest things that I think of this team can do is like somebody can really be hiding somebody that's really important, and then you can just use your Apprentice to really your Apprentice and your Cryptex to really surprise somebody. Moving on to the big bosses themselves. Do you want to give us a little bit of a rundown of each one and why you would take each one?
Yeah, so there's the Chronomancer, which you're taking most of the time. So it's probably the most important one to go over. And he is, you can think of him as like your time wizard. He changes time. He either can make someone move faster on your team and give them a 5-up feel no pain, or he can create what's called a counter-temporal nanomine, which reduces 2 inches from the distance that models can move during an activation. And this is kind of the cheesy bit. So in the recent data slate, they made us a new universal rule that the movement characteristic cannot be modified to less than 2 inches, even if injured. But because the countertemporal nanomine isn't reducing the movement characteristic, it still applies. So even if you have, like, for instance, like another Necron player or a Death Guard or something that has 4 inches of movement and they're injured, you could then remove that final 2 inches off of them, so they're unable to move as long as you're within 6 inches of it. And basically how it works is it removes 2 inches off of any action that they move within 6 inches of the mine. So it doesn't just remove 2 inches from their movement, it removes 2 inches from every move action, which means if you're moving, you're going to move, say you have a 6-inch movement, you're going to move for 4 inches, but then your dash, if you're still within 6 inches, is only going to be a 1-inch dash. Your charge is going to only be 6 inches. Like, that is what's pretty cool about it.
That's
so you can reduce someone who's got a 6-inch movement down to literally only 5 inches of potential movement.
Yeah, that's super, super. Especially, imagine doing that to like an intercession squad member or something like that.
Yeah,
when they really need to get something or move somewhere. Because on elite teams, you really depend on your movement. You really can't really make a mistake. Do you think that these guys are? Who do you think is like their best matchup compared to their worst matchup?
Best matchup versus their worst matchup. That's a good question. So their worst matchup's probably the easiest one because I think it's probably Kasserkin. Funny enough, the team that came out with them.
Even over Pathfinders?
Yeah, I think Kasserkin give them a really hard time, and that might be just because I play Chris Baki all the time. I don't know, but they're just well suited to deal with Hierotek Circle. Best matchup, that's a good one. Probably Intercession. I think I would say that their best matchup is probably like Intercession.
So would you also say it's Legionary because they're very similar? Or do you
they're
think
really good into both of those teams for sure.
Oh, wow. And why is that?
I mean, they're just really good at taking out, a model every turn, no matter what. And when you've only got 6 models, that's brutal.
Yeah, that'll do it 100%. Especially if they focus it down, and that's typically the route that you want to go if you're facing any of those elite teams is just to focus one down at a time.
I was thinking
some teams are better than others at it.
Like, because if you think about it, as an intercession player, my general idea is if I'm going to shoot at someone twice with the regular guy, I need to make sure they die. So if I shoot someone twice, but then they reanimate, then that messes up my plans hugely. So I can't counter that. So this is really good against elite teams.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right? When an elite team kills you, they're expecting you to die, and this team sort of, bucks that trend.
So you would say, what about Harlequins? Would Harlequins be good into these guys, or do you think that they just don't have enough of the damage output? Because the Kasserkins really have a lot of damage output. So does like Pathfinders and Vetguard and stuff like that.
Yeah, the cool thing about Harlequins, which makes them tough, is Domino Field for sure. I think Domino Field is their big strength against this team because it sort of negates your ability to remove one of their models guaranteed. I think it's an interesting matchup for sure. If it's a good Harlequin player, they're gonna know how to kind of move around and keep you outside of 6 inches, and it can be a really tough uphill battle. I do think that it's not as bad as something like Kasserkin though, where they're just removing multiple Necrons off the board each turn and doing
yeah, it doesn't matter to them,
yeah. The thing is that if you're taking the Chronomancer into Void Dancers, Harlequins, you're going to be able to sort of mess with their movement a lot, and I think that's sort of where the play becomes interesting because you've got this sort of back and forth with movement, and since Harlequins are kind of all about movement, it can really mess up maybe their strategy. But any good Harlequin players probably played through all the different matchups a bunch of times, so as long as they're experienced with the matchup, they're going to give you a tough time. It's not going to be straightforward. But if it's a Harlequin player that's not used to the Hierotek matchup, I think it can really be a shocker for them for sure.
Makes sense. Now, the Psychomancer, he's the other best option, correct?
Yeah, real quick though, Chronomancer, last ability, he can turn someone's regular save into an invuln save, which I almost never take, but I just wanted to point it out that that's his third ability. And then, okay, so yeah, Psychomancer. Psychomancer, I think, is your elite killer. He's really strong. I usually bring him against, like I was saying, Intercession, Legionary, those Custodes, those sort of teams, because of his AP2 blasts with splash, so he can trigger, like a pretty crazy thing against elites. But he's also got abilities. His first one, Conjure Trauma. He can select an enemy operative visible to him, and until the end of the turning point, it's treated as being injured, regardless of any rules that say it cannot be injured, which actually is one of the few special abilities that gets around the, I think it's durable, or is it methodical? Which one's the one, Giacomo, Intercession, one that removes the injured?
Methodical. Yeah, where you can ignore the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, Conjure Trauma is one of the few things that can get around methodical.
Huh.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. And then Nightmare Shroud, you can select an enemy operative within 6 inches, and until the end of the turning point, each time an enemy operative within 6 inches of the Psychomancer fights or makes a shooting attack, your opponent cannot re-roll their attack dice and cannot retain attack dice as critical hits. So you turn on Nightmare Shroud, and you somehow, I think maybe the better play is to have the Psychomancer on the field and be doing some of these with the Apprentice so that you keep your Psychomancer safe. But having that ability to, like, basically turn plasma into useless and, like, guarantee that if they get a 1, they can't re-roll it. It's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's super strong.
And not being able to re-roll for a team like Intercessors is really, really debilitating. And then not having any crits, like, that's strong.
It's brutal. Absolutely brutal.
And then Harbinger of Despair. You select a point, and now this is kind of cool because it's a point that's visible to this operative, but there's no distance requirement. So as long as the Cryptek or Apprentice that uses the power sees this point, they can just activate it, and it goes onto that point. It could be all the way on the other side of the board, but you place a token on that point. And each time an enemy operative would perform a mission action or the pickup action within 2 inches of that token, 1 additional action point must be subtracted for that enemy operative to perform that action. In addition, when determining control of an objective marker that token is within 2 inches of, treat enemy operative's total APL as being 1 less. Note that this is not a modifier. So, basically, you can just, like, make it an extra action to pick up a recover item, or make it an extra action point to claim an objective. You can make a model that has 3 APL, now 2 APL, so you can compete with it. That sort of thing. It's pretty strong as well. And one cool thing is the Psychomancer in combat, his weapon has Reap 3.
Wow.
Which is
Okay.
crazy.
Now that is Reap is pretty gross. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't even know, because mostly you look at his shooting profile. You don't typically look very much at his
Yeah.
at his melee weapon. But Reap 3, that's pretty brutal.
Yeah, I mean the one downside is it's not a lot of damage. His shooting's 2-2 and his melee is 2-3. But so
Take him
getting
into hordes.
yeah. Well, that's the thing is I don't think he's a good horde. If you're taking against hordes, I would almost always recommend the Chronomancer. But the Psychomancer is definitely the more elite killer, I think, and it's more based on the abilities that he does. I kind of think of his shooting and his fighting as like just a bonus that he gets to add on top of them.
Yeah.
There is a good note, and this is probably a good time to make the note. Is in the most recent data slate, one of the changes that they made is the cryptech actions, whereas in the book they're written that they expire at the end of the turning point. They now have changed that so it changes end of the turning point to the start of the next the start of this operative's next activation if it's incapacitated or if another friendly operative performs this action, whichever comes first. So, for instance, if you drop that Harbinger of Despair token, you could leave it there. Like, say you drop it the first activation of your turn. You can then leave it there that whole turn, and if the Psychomancer is the last model you activate on the second turn, it effectively lasts for 2 turns.
Huh.
And
Intriguing.
yeah, that also is the same if the Apprentech uses the Cryptech ability. So if the Apprentech does it, and then the Apprentech doesn't activate until the end of the turn, it stays there as well. And that also works for like the Chrono Mine, which is what I call the countertemporal nanomine. You could drop the nanomine somewhere, like on Into the Dark. It's really brutal. You can drop it down in like a hallway, and then like close the door, and then like it's there for like the next 2 turns, and just like the enemy is just like moving or not, like moving at 5 inches or like less.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. I'm a big fan.
And then the final Cryptech is the Technomancer, and his ability kind of stems around reanimating. So he buffs like repair and reanimating. He has the Rites of Reanimation ability, which is similar to the one that the Plasmacyte Reanimator has. So if you activate it, you can reanimate around him if you're within 6 inches, which just basically adds a third way that your team can reanimate in a game.
So would you take this guy into teams that you struggle with, like the Carsicans and possibly Pathfinders? Like, would you take this particular guy just because you can reanimate more than just what you could before?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, and I'm sure that there is a use for him, like you said, in an ability where you're already going to be suffering. That's kind of his strength, is if you're going to be suffering already, he helps you suffer less. The problem I have, though, is if you're already getting to that point, you've like lost the game. So the ability for him to like save you isn't really like a game winning strategy in my opinion. But maybe prove me wrong. Take the Technomancer. He comes in the Hierotek Circle box, so he's the easiest one to
That's right.
get.
Take him and then win BAO, and Sheldon will be like, "Well, let me get your
Exactly.
tips and tricks."
Yeah, but he's got the ability to do a reanimator, or he can you can select a friendly operative visible to and within 3 inches of it. they regain 2 D3 lost wounds, or D3 lost wounds if it was successfully reanimated. So he can heal people even more than they've already been healed from like living metal or from a reanimation, which is pretty cool. And his last ability is the Nanoscarab Repair Swarm. Until the end of the turning point, friendly Hierotek Circle operatives cannot be injured. In addition, in the ready operative step of the next turning point, friendly Hierotek Circle operatives regain up to 1 additional lost wound as a result of the living metal ability, so that goes up to 3 instead of 2, and are reanimated with 1 additional wound remaining. So basically, he changes D3 plus 5 into D3 plus 7.
It's pretty gross.
Yeah. And then there's an ability that all of the cryptics have, which is called Command. So you can select a friendly Deathmark or Immortal operative, which includes the Despotech, by the way, within 6 inches of either this operative or a friendly Immortal Despotech operative, and that selected friendly operative can immediately perform a free fight, Overwatch, 1 AP pickup, or 1 AP mission action. This operative cannot
Wow.
action while within engagement range of an enemy operative.
Wait, what?
So,
What about the fight one?
so
Or is it saying specifically?
can't be in engagement range to do it? Is what it's saying. Not the model that you're.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay, yeah, gotcha. So, yeah, what's fascinating about this is that Overwatch can be super powerful if you're going to get an extra shot off before that model's even gone yet, right? Because you can do this before they've even performed any actions, correct?
Yeah, you can get an out of sequence Overwatch with this, which I think is where it's the strongest. But the free fight is actually also pretty powerful if you know that, for instance, you're going to be in a fight anyways. You can kind of like force the fight to happen, and at least in your favor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the Overwatch is really strong because not only do you get basically a free shooting attack out of sequence, it can be like sometimes really crazy. Like you could have a model like I was saying before with like the Death Mark, you run the Death Mark, even though he has a heavy weapon, he can still shoot with it using the command ability because it's treated as an Overwatch.
No, I love that. That's a really cool ability, and it's something that people should definitely not overlook, is because it is definitely one of their better options that they can do once per turn.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool.
And then I think we touched on it before when we talked about the Apprentech, but the magnification conduit, which allows them to send their shooting attack through the Apprentech. What we didn't touch on, though, is it allows you to re-roll a dice result number when you do so. So it can be confusing for some people, but basically, so you're let's take the Technomancer, for instance. He has the Staff of Light. He's got 6 attacks, hitting on 3s. If you roll, for instance, like a 1 and 3 2s, you can re-roll all the 2s. But if you roll 3 1s and a 2, you could re-roll all the 1s. So it lets you choose one number and you re-roll that number.
Oh. All right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. We've touched on most of this stuff and a lot of high level play with these guys. I have a question. Is there a team that's coming up that was recently announced that might make you put down these Necrons and join the ranks of a different of something else?
I mean, nothing's gonna ever make me like leave the Necrons. I mean, I've got 25,000 points of Necrons for a reason.
Of course. Yeah, same thing with the Eldar. Yeah.
But I am currently working on my inquisitorial agents team, which I'm pretty
Okay.
hyped about. As you may know, I've got a lot of Inquisition. I've been secretly building this team for 5 years, apparently.
You even brought it to LVO before we knew.
Because I already have all of my Vet Guard painted as if they're Inquisition. I already have the Arbites. I already have the Scions painted as if they're Inquisition. I already have basically all of the Inquisitorial agents, like perfect proxies for all of them. And I have the Breachers, and I've got the the Sisters of Silence. I've just got all of the models ready to go. The only ones I'm missing are the Kasserkin, basically, to be able to run every single option for this team that's coming out. I'm pretty hyped about it.
Yeah, I'm also extremely hyped about this team. Giacomo, has this made you want to pick up Necrons for Kill Team? I know back in the day, you were tempted to pick these bad boys up. What about now?
I would say, yeah. I like some of the unique abilities, and it gave me a chance to play those armies that I never got to play, and this is definitely one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd consider it. If you find the box lying around somewhere. Only downside is trying to find the other, literally the Chronomancer. That's about it because it's sold out. But that's not like a big loss. I won't lose my life over it. I think they're an enjoyable team.
I've got like 4 Chronomancers.
That is totally fair. You have 4 Chronomancers? Oh, I should have hit you up, man.
You should have.
Yeah, I've got like 4 Chronomancers, 2 Psychomancers, like 5 Technomancers.
Well, to be fair, I called him a couple times, but he was busy.
I didn't realize that the Chronomancer was hard to get because I always just assumed like it's always been sort of a running joke that every tournament you buy it. Every tournament you can win a Pariah Nexus, right? And they're hanging out at every store.
Yeah.
They try to get
I didn't realize this became... Yeah.
No, yeah, this team looks like a lot of fun. I'm excited that they're finally good and everyone can start learning about them and playing them and finding out all the little tricks and kits and tools to make them better. Yeah, the Hierotek's going to be a lot of fun in this upcoming tournament season. Hopefully they stick around. And like something like the Beastmen don't just like be like, oh, well, these Beastmen hard counter these guys so hard that, they're just unplayable again. Like, I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah. I'm definitely thinking these cultists look pretty scary.
Bro, they're so cool. They're so cool. I'm super excited to play them.
I think someone at GW heard me talking about it because I literally have been saying since those models were previewed, oh my god, wouldn't it be a cool kill team if they like slowly like morphed into the more like possessed dudes? And I was like throughout the game, and I've been saying that like very loudly around a lot of playtesters for a while. I almost wonder.
So you're like you orked it into existence, huh?
I've been wanting that so bad, and now it exists. I'm like, wow, that's really what a coincidence.
It's kind of like me and the Space Marine Heroes,
that too.
Complaining about it loudly for so long that Games Workshop heard the cries of my orc cries in the warp, and they've answered my prayers. Thank you, Gork and Mork.
Heck yeah. Emmanuel would be proud.
He would be mad. He already is. He's already.
He gets so much praise on this podcast.
He does. Well, I like Emmanuel.
Coolest, so, he's a cool guy.
He is, and he has a great blog, right? So,
Strategic Advantage. Check him out.
Yeah, it's a great blog site. Learn a lot from there, and he does great things for this community.
And speaking of good things for the community, stay tuned for the next installment of Crash of the Emperor's Bounty, brought to us by Rob right now.
Chapter 1, Mission 3, Eliminate Target.
One of the rival kill teams managed to locate Captain Van Brent. She survived the crash escape pod, but has not yet recovered enough to be of any use. The captain of the Emperor's Bounty is a priority target and cannot be allowed to fall into your enemy's control. You must capture her, or failing that, ensure she will not be of any help to the enemy. You know what you must do.
Welcome to Chapter 1, Mission 3, Eliminate Target, from the Emperor's Bounty campaign. So far in this chapter, you landed on the moon of Oxygen 4 and scouted out where the possible landing site of the escape pods was. In the last mission, you and your kill team searched the wreckage of those escape pods looking for vital information, perhaps the relic itself, or any surviving crew members. In this mission, Mission 3, you will either be defending the captain while interrogating her to find more information about the crash, or trying to eliminate the captain before she gives any valuable information to your enemy kill teams. This is a variation of an Octarius mission. There have been some significant changes, so please read through the mission rules. So far, I've played this one a few times, and it leads to some really great narrative moments, like maybe a Breacher Boy tossing a dynamite through a wall, or Reavers going on the attack. So play this mission, pay attention to the Spec Op campaign at the bottom and all the special rules. For this mission, I strongly encourage you to get a guard equivalent model to represent Captain Van Brent. I'm using the Breacher Sergeant from the Navis Breachers, and read through those important bits of special rules so you can give this mission its full due. A couple reminders. At the end of this mission, you might have been able to complete your spec op for this campaign. You can only do one spec op per chapter. It should take you 3 or 4 missions to do so. Remember, we are shrinking down the requirements. Instead of 5 missions with completing a Vantage TAC op or something like that, you only need to do 2 of those. So you should have possibly already completed that by mission 2, and you might be finishing your spec op entirely by mission 3. You can't start a new spec op until the next chapter, though. Also, pay attention, there are different special bonuses for this mission, depending if you're the attacker or the defender. And remember, some of you might have earned the ability to reroll the attacker or defender dice from the last mission. That might be really important in this as well. As always, have fun and let us know how it went, and post any great stories or, thematic moments, especially anything that belongs in an action movie, to the Squad Games Discord. I'll be back later with our final mission of the first chapter. But for now, good luck in Chapter 1, Mission 3, Eliminate Target.
Well, there you go. Mission number 3. Thank you guys for listening. And back to you, Dakotah.
Now, G, is there anything that you want to shout out?
That I want to shout out, yes. I want to shout out all the patrons, like I mentioned before. Their contribution allows us to not only do this podcast, but allows us to also run more events out here in SoCal and even in other places like Las Vegas Open. We have to provide a lot of stuff on our own. So this really helps us give back to a lot of the people who want to play this game. So if you're thinking of joining or any interest at all in doing that, you can find our Patreon link in the show notes. Any little amount helps. We really appreciate it. And I also want to shout out anyone on the Discord, the Squad Games Discord. We have a lot of conversations there. You have all sorts of people from different places, like Dakotah mentioned earlier, and it's a fun place just to talk and to share all your hobby stuff and whatnot. And of course, you can find us on Instagram at the squad_games_entertainment, where we're going to be updating stuff such as little pictures of things we do, event stuff, all that standard social media things you got to have. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. The Patreon. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but for all the FLG events and stuff, all of the tournament organizers for every event is just a person who volunteers their time. Right. So we don't make any money off the event or anything like that. So all those little donations do help. So it's very important. Now, Mr. Sheldon, the important person in this podcast, what do you want to shout out, brother?
I've got a couple things. First off, we touched on it earlier, the Bay Area Open coming up in May 27th to 28th, Memorial Day weekend. Shouting out the Bats, the Bay Area Tournament Squad. We run monthly tournaments out here in the Bay Area. If you're anywhere in the Bay Area of California, come check us out. We run tournaments at the Gamescape North in San Rafael, as well as the Fremont Game Castle and Games of Berkeley. We put up all the events on Best Coast Pairings, so just search it if you're in the area and come meet us, come play with us. We have a good time. It's always fun, and we're trying to build the scene out here in the Bay Area. So if you're listening and you're anywhere in the Bay Area of California, come check us out and come play some games. We'll have a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Should be a fun time,
Well,
guys.
That is it for us. Absolutely. Thank you guys for listening, as always. Thank you for, again, supporting us, and peace out.
Peace out.